Well, David, they're the government. They're designing the scheme. They've laid down the parameters. We agreed with those original parameters, and that is don't disadvantage. They said they could do it. Don't disadvantage our export industries.
But surely
and
you
all
must
those,
have an idea.
The millions of Australians who work in those industries. I'm not going to sit here today and map out chapter and verse what the government and design a scheme for the government. We are responding to their scheme. Their scheme.
But how is the government meant to progress from here? I mean, if you're not putting forward ideas, how are they meant to get
we are putting forward ideas. We're putting forward a very clear objective: design a scheme which protects all of those companies that are either exporters or competing against imports. That was
but how?
I thought
but how
that
do
was
you do that?
I thought that was a united objective within.
Okay, but how do you do that?
Well, David, there are 800 pages in the scheme. Often there are multiple ways in which you provide that protection, right? So there could be 30 different elements of a scheme which actually give you that outcome. So to come up with one magic bullet to solve all those problems often is not possible. And certainly, you know, it is the government's job. They are the ones who are designing this scheme. They've got the responsibility. They won office. They are the government. They're the ones with the document on the paper. They're the ones with the document on the table. It is up to them now to work through and come up and deliver on the promises that they made before the last election about the design of this scheme.
Well, with respect, Andrew Robb, it sounds like you're saying it's too hard for the opposition to put forward detailed proposals of its own.
No, I didn't say that at all. We will, once we've considered the Senate Committee of Inquiry, which is completing its work now, which did go to a lot of issues that the government has not looked at over the last 18 months. Once we've considered that, once we've looked further at the report provided to us last week by the Centre for International Economics, we will put on the table a scheme that we believe will not cost jobs, but will also deliver significant cuts, very significant cuts in CO2 emissions. Now, that is the ultimate objective. We have said all along that there is more than one tool in the climate change toolbox. And this is the problem. The government is trying to do with one scheme, one emissions trading scheme, it's trying to, in many respects, do the impossible, and that is get deep cuts, not cause job losses, tens of thousands of job losses, when the rest of the world is not involved. Now, we have said to them all along, if you employ a lot more tools in the climate change toolbox, you can get to that objective. We will lay that out, but I'm not going to lay out our policy prescriptions today. We will do that when we've finalised them and properly considered them.
Okay, but the Coalition has been saying since 2007, and I've got a list of quotes here, that we'll set out both long and medium and long-term targets after the Garneau review. We won't set out any figures until we've seen the government's modelling. Well, all of those things have been done. We'll wait until the white paper. That's been done. We want to see what the government's targets and objectives are. That's been done. Again and again, the Coalition has said, we'll tell you what we're going to do. So exactly when will that be? You're now saying after the Senate inquiry. So in June, will we see your detailed response?
Well, David, you know, the government's program has been a moving feast. We got to the end of Garneau and they've virtually picked up none of the Garneau report, despite 3 volumes and nearly 12 months of work. You know, we have had to continue to reassess what the government's doing. They've changed their mind on many occasions, and now we've seen yesterday another backflip. And so, you know, all of these things require us to consider these things before we put down our program. But we will have a program in place before the substantive debate, or by the time the substantive debate starts in the Senate, when the government has presented its legislation. Okay, so that will happen presumably, therefore, in June? In the coming weeks that will happen, David. In the coming weeks we will see that detailed response. By the time the substantive debate begins, we will have our thoughts on the table. All right. Just another matter, if I can, Andrew Robb. One of your backbench colleagues, Bronwyn Bishop, has spoken to her local newspaper, the Manly Daily. She's had a shot at Malcolm Turnbull, suggesting, and I quote, basically the big bucks stopped flowing from donors
when they don't know what the party stands for and have no confidence the leader can take us to government. She goes on to say, when Brendan Nelson was leader, he was at 19% approval but moving upwards, and now Malcolm is moving backwards. What's your response to that?
David, I'm not going to get into comments from colleagues. What I will say, though, is that I think Malcolm has dealt with a number of really major and critical issues in a very strong and determined and clear fashion. You know, the fact that many Australians are now totally bemused and concerned and frustrated at the unsustainable debt that has been built up by this government owes much to the case that's been laid out and the strong position. It is a matter of great strength to oppose $42 billion stimulus package. That showed a clear direction, you know, where we would take the party, where Malcolm would take the party. So, you know, I would dispute the claims that have been made or the comments that have been made, and just say to you that Malcolm, on both the major issue, and that is the economy, and now on the question of emissions trading, much of the government's panic and backflip and all of the rest of it is due to sustained pressure on this issue, sustained exposure of the government's failure to deliver an effective scheme. So on the two big issues confronting the country at the moment, I think Malcolm has been very effective.
Andrew Robb, thank you very much for joining us today.
That's my pleasure, David.
And stay with us after the break.